Hello board gamers, and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now in today's video I'm going to do something a little bit different. I am going to talk about and rank the games from Mindclash Games from a solo perspective. I'm going to go through all of the Mindclash games I played and then talk about the ones, that have been released that I played, and then talk about some of the ones that haven't yet been released. But I'll not be ranking those because they're not in their final format. So who are Mindclash Games? Well, I'm sure most board gamers are aware of who Mindclash are. They are a company that loves to develop these wonderfully deep and strategic games, some real kind of crunchy, brain-twisting games, always very, very high quality. Their main line is these deeply strategic games, but they also have the sideline, I suppose, which is the Mindclash Play, which is the more accessible titles, think Ironwood, etc. So my gaming preferences vary wildly, but one thing I do like is a deeply crunchy strategic game, something I can really get my teeth into and play maybe over a couple of days rather than in one session as a solo gamer. So there are a couple of companies out there that really kind of scratch that itch for me. We have Mindclash and we have Eagle Griffin Games with their Vita Lacerda games. Those are the main two. Of course, you have lots of other companies doing deep and crunchy strategic games, but I've been pretty much a fan of most Mindclash games that I played, and certainly some of the ones that are coming through development right now as well. I've had a really, really good time with them. So I thought what I'd do is I'd go through them and I'd rank them from a solo perspective. So by ranking them, I think there are 8 releases from Mindclash, certainly 8 that I played there. But before I start talking about those kind of 8 releases, technically it's 7, but I'm going to class Perseverance episodes 1 and 2 as 2 separate releases because they are different games, just come in a big box if you want both of them. So I'm going to class those as separate releases. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the ones that I've not put on the list, either because I haven't played them solo or because they're still going through development. This isn't necessarily to rank them, it's just to say my experience with them. We'll start off with the nice and light one, which is Astra. Now, Astra is this flip and write game, if you like, where you're building constellations. Look, I played this at 2 players with my wife. We take it away in our motorhome, in the RV, if you like, if you're American, and have a great time with it. There is a solo mode. I think it was a fan-made solo mode that you can play with it. I've never played it solo. It doesn't really feel like my kind of game from a solo perspective. It's very much a light game, is Astra. You're making these constellations, and yeah, it's okay, but I've not ranked it because, quite frankly, I haven't played it solo, and this is a list about solo games, so I can't really rank that. Next up is one that I have played a couple of times in a couple of iterations, and it's still going through development as we speak, and this is Revenant, which is a game set in the Voidfall universe. It uses some of the same artwork, etc., as the Revenant, and certainly some of the same backstory, but it's as Voidfall. But it's a very different game how it plays. Now, I have played this solo. I have played it with other people as well in a couple of different developments and iterations, and it's going to be being tweaked from the last time I played it as well. I really like Revenant. It's not Voidfall, but it uses some of the Voidfall mechanisms in the game. It's not Voidfall. It's very much its own game, and there's a real sense when you play it with other people. It's not a semi-co-op game, but you will be potentially doing things for the benefit of all, but ultimately trying to beat everybody at the same time in it. Solo plays very, very well from what I played as solo. It's a good few months since I played the solo now, and I think it's changed a little bit since then. So, but I am looking forward to Revenant. I think it's going through some artwork changes at the moment, and I think it's due to be delivered to backers, if not back end of this year, some part early next year there. So that's Revenant. Another one that I've played that I can't even give you the name of and I can't really say too much about it is the Voidfall expansion, which has been announced. Now, I played this in a pretty early stage, if you like, of its development. There were printed cardboard tiles, etc. for it. I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't think there's been any information released about it at this stage, other than there is a Voidfall expansion coming. But yeah, that has got a lot of potential to answer some questions that people raised about Voidfall, and you get my views on Voidfall later, but it got some potential to answer some of the views that were raised about Voidfall. that's it. I'm not going to show you any pictures. I'm not going to tell you anything else about it. Just that from what I played, yeah, I had a very, very good time with it. And I think when people see it, they will be very, very impressed. So that's kind of the three, if you like, their games that are not ranked because either they're not released yet or they... I haven't played them solo. So then we're going to go into the ranking. I think there's 8 of them. So we're going to go into the rankings of the Mindclash games I've played solo. By far and away, in 8th place, my least favourite Mindclash game. And I played it a couple of times with other people. And I played it about 10 times solo, and then I sold it, and I don't think I've ever sold a Mindclash game, and that is Septima. This is this one where you are, you're the witches, etc., and you've got the big board, and if you got the deluxe version like I did when I backed it, then you got the plastic trays and with the cauldron and everything like that. I just didn't find it engaging at all. With other players, it was fine. There's probably a million other games that I would prefer to play other than Septima before I got to Septima. But if somebody brought it out, I'd probably say, okay, yeah, let's give it a go. I didn't have a bad time with it from a multiplayer perspective. Solo just didn't work for me. I just didn't get any sense of excitement, engagement from a solo perspective. And it went on way, way too long as well. Now, it certainly has its fans. There are people out there that really enjoy Septima and enjoy the experience of it. Of course, it looks absolutely fantastic and the production quality is out of this world. So there are people out there that really enjoy it and enjoy the solo. But for me, it was a swing and a miss, a rare swing and a miss from the guys over at Mindclash. Septima, say, there's a big gap between Septima as my 8th favourite game that I'm going to talk about, and then Ironwood, which is my 7th favourite Mindclash game. Now, Ironwood is a 1 to 2 player skirmish game set on a fixed map, and you're either going to play as the I think it's the Ironborn or the Woodland Folk or whatever they're called, and they are completely asymmetrical factions. Again, as a 2-player game, it works very effectively as a skirmish game. There's some area control in there as you're trying to, beat the other team and from fulfilling their objectives. When it gets to solo, each faction has their own kind of David Turksey designed solo AI decision trees, if you like. So the solo works well. It works very well. For me, for some people, they thought it was a bit swingy and a bit too faffy, etc. But you do have to go through a certain amount of steps on each one. It's not necessarily an easy game to learn solo if you don't understand the 2-player game, because you have to understand the asymmetry on the factions. And it can be sometimes very difficult to beat, depending on which faction you are. And also then, depending on what happens, sometimes you can find a path to victory fairly easy. However, it plays in about an hour. So if I'm looking for that kind of skirmish type experience, then I'm probably going to pull Ironwood out, because I just enjoyed the card play in it and the area control mechanism and the kind of multi-use cards that you're getting from there, and which ones to keep, which ones to use, and which ones might I need later, etc. There's a nice dichotomy there, but that solo does have these decision trees, and they're asymmetrical, so there's 2 different sets of decision trees that will operate very differently throughout the game depending on the state of the board. That kind of overhead is probably going to be too much for some people. It's certainly a game that would have benefited from a solo AI app in one form or another. So that's my number 7, which is Ironwood, the 1 to 2 player game. Then we're going to go at number 6, and at number 6 I'm going to choose Perseverance Part 1. Now, Perseverance is a game. You are obviously stranded, you on this island, etc., and you have dinosaurs. The first game is all about kind of building up your defenses, stopping the dinos coming in to get you. There are people out there that just feel it's 3/4 of a game. I can almost understand that as well, because it's an okay game. It's a good game in its own right, but it feels like there's more to come, and that's why they have Perseverance Episode 2, and of course coming out Perseverance 3 and 4. Oh, I have played Perseverance Episode 3 a couple of times in its development as well. probably my favourite iteration so far of Perseverance, but I can't really rank that because, you know, it's not out yet. I've not played Perseverance Episode 4. But Perseverance Episode 1, you know, I like it. You've got the kind of resource management, a little bit of area control. You can battle into or staving off against the dinos that are coming from you from the top of the map. The solo works very well. You have some cards that you're going to flip over. That's going to dictate the solo's actions, etc. But it sometimes feels like it's cut a bit short without a big kind of crescendo of an ending, if you like. And that's because the game is an episodic game, so therefore there is more to come off the back end of that. But, you know, I will say I really do like Perseverance Episode 1. I know most people prefer Episode 2, and I obviously do because it's, you know, if this is number 6, whatever it is, 7, then Episode 2 is obviously going to be further down the list. But yeah, by all means, go and check out Episode 1. It's a nice introduction into the world and the mechanisms of Perseverance. So then, yes, and at number 6, I have Mindclash's probably oft forgotten and underlooked game. And this is Cerebria. Cerebria is a game where you are in charge of an asymmetrical part of your inner workings of your brain. It's essentially an area control mechanism with this wonderful tower that you can build up in the middle as well. It's a game that potentially suffers from a rule book that overcomplicates things, because once you get past some of the gobbledygook in the rule book, it's not a bad rule book, it just gives you a little bit more and expands a little bit more than what is absolutely needed, I think. But once you get that through that, the gameplay becomes pretty straightforward, to tell you the truth. I'll say it's mainly, by majority, an area control game. And from a solo perspective, your AI opponent is going to be the ego, and it is a good and challenging. And I play Cerebria. I haven't played it for a while now. In fact, it's a game that's on my list to get on the table, but I haven't played it for a while now. But whenever I lost a game of Cerebria, I didn't feel cheated. I felt like I battled against a really good AI opponent. I think it's probably a game that has a lot of thematic evocation. Is that the right word? Yeah. It presents a lot of theme, but by and large, the gameplay can feel a little bit mechanical rather than kind of totally theme integrated. It's, you know, I think it's oft overlooked by people because maybe the subject matter doesn't appeal to people, because the solo is, you know, it's okay, but you need to understand how the game plays before you dive into the solo. And I think the rulebook is a little bit off-putting. I think it needed streamlining somewhat. But once you break through that barriers, it's a really good and crunchy game. But if you're into a game for theme, the theme it's not pasted on. Everything is there in relation to the theme, but it just feels like I'm mechanically playing. That makes it sound like it's pasted on, but it's definitely not. It's not a fully thematically integrated game. Is the best thing I can say about is the thing I can say about it there. But please don't overlook Cerebria. You can probably pick it up, if not from Mindclash themselves, in a number of places. It's one of those games that you don't hear people talk about a lot, and I'd like to see what people think about Cerebria. More people play Cerebria. Okay, we're probably going to go with Perseverance Episode 2. So we've already talked about Perseverance Episode 1, you've landed on the island, etc., and you're defending from dinos, you're building up your camps. So Episode 2 takes you to the next stage of it. And from Episode 2, what we got now is this, you're exploring the island, you're going to find temples, you're going to battle dinosaurs out in the forest and the woods, etc. It takes a lot of the mechanisms from Episode 1 and then expands on them and brings some new ones, and it suddenly feels like a more rounded game than Episode 1. Totally get why I love the reason that Episode 1 exists. It feeds you into that and then moves you on to Episode 2. And in fact, from a solo perspective, and I think maybe from a multiplayer perspective, you can play, let's call it a campaign. It's not a campaign. You can join the two together. So you play in Episode 1, then what you could have done from there carries over into Episode 2. And I really like that about it. What they haven't done is they've not just said, hey, here's two games that are connected, but nowhere to play them together and join the story. And what you can do now is actually absolutely join the story and play them both through. it becomes more interesting as you're moving out into the forest and the jungle, etc., and you're trying to understand, explore this land and get to the temples and achieve objectives, etc. It becomes a more rounded game. If you only played one Perseverance game, you could quite happily play episode 2 without playing episode 1. You wouldn't need to have knowledge of episode 1, and it would be a great standalone game. But I do like the fact that it is episodic, and episode 3 takes you even further. Episode 3, you get to ride on dinosaurs. Oh man, you put saddles on dinosaurs, you get to tame them and ride on the dinosaurs. And episode 4, I don't know, I haven't played it, couldn't tell you, could not tell you. I know they get released later this year, and I'm so looking forward to completing my Perseverance. So yeah, Perseverance episode 2, for me, the better of the 2 released Perseverance games. Okay, we are down to what was the top 3, which essentially became the hardest 3 for me to decide on. All 3 are Mindclash tentpoles. All 3 games I could possibly switch position on at any given time. Any of these top 3 games at any given time could be my favourite Mindclash game of all time. However, I'm making a stake in the ground, and right now, as it stands right now, and just because it's number 3 does not mean that I dislike this game. I am talking Anachrony. Okay, so Anachrony, but for it to be fully appreciated, you must have the full big box Ultimate Edition with everything in. That's the whole Fractures of Time stuff, etc. Anachrony on its own as a base game works fine. It's okay, but again, it's one of those games where it feels like there's more. Yeah, and I should imagine when it was first released, people really enjoyed it. But after they played it a few times, like, I want more from this. Well, obviously they had us covered. Mindclash had us covered with, the all of the modules and etc. that they added, but also the is it Chronosis or Chronobot? Chronosis maybe. The AI in the first one works absolutely fine in the base game, but it really starts to come alive when you got the new Chronobot or Chronosis 2.0, I can't remember it, whatever it's called. And Anachrony is, of course, a time travel game. It's not really a time travel game. There are various, depending on what modules you put in there, you're doing stuff and you're borrowing stuff from your future self to pay back later on, so you can send your exosuits out and get resources, be that science or technology, etc., and again try and get as many points as possible from it. I like the base game, but I never now play the base game on its own. I certainly learnt it using just the base game, but to really appreciate everything that Anachrony's got, you've got to start looking at the Fractures of Time and all the modules you can add to it. And yes, they potentially are going to expand your game, and you can add multiple modules into the same game as well. And you've got the improved AI in that comes with the Fractures of Time. And honestly, it's one of those games. It feels like it's complex to learn, but it's not, and it's probably a game I get out a couple of times a year, and I have to refresh myself through the rule books. But when I do, it surprises me how quickly I pick it up and how much fun I can have, adding modules into the game and expanding on my experience. I really, really like Anachrony, and I've never played it with anybody else. I've played it purely solo. I think there's only 2 modules in all the modules you can get that don't interact with solo, but I've only played it from a solo perspective, and I absolutely adore Anachrony. But as I say, I had to make a stake in the ground and say what my number 3 game is. But please, if you like the idea of a game that you can learn and then add some progression to it in terms of modules, and if you can start tailoring your experience to give you the game that you want, it's like a game maker's dream if you like this, then you should check out the big box Ultimate Edition, whatever it's called, of Anachrony, because the Infinity Box, that's it, because I think it's an absolutely stunning game if you have more for it than the base game. And I think that's probably the reason why it's at number 3, is you need to invest more money in Anachrony to get the most from it. But absolutely, as I say, maybe if I got it out tomorrow, it may well shoot to the top of my Mindclash Games list, because I don't know, because that's just how I feel on that particular day. And I would be happy about that. If somebody said to me tomorrow, after I played the game, what's your favourite Mindclash game? I go, probably Anachrony. But then of course, that would be after I played the game the next time. And then as soon as I played one of the other 3 in the top 3, then that might change. So that's my number 3, Anachrony, but you must have the Infinity Box to really, truly appreciate Anachrony. When it came down to the final two, these final two, at this stage where I am right now with stuff, this became a very hard decision because I know, wow, I know a game that I absolutely love and adore and think it's absolutely fantastic. And I also have a game that I love and adore and think it's absolutely fantastic. Both of them are crunchy games. Both of them require you to read big rule books. Both of them require you to get to grips with multiple mechanisms in there. But once you do on both of these games, oh my God, you are going to have a fantastic, fantastic time. So at number 2, and they've just had a Kickstarter for an expansion, and they have their, is it a 10-year anniversary edition that's coming out. I picked this up on my very first Essen. I didn't know anybody at Mindclash at this point, so it's fitting it into my suitcase to come back from Essen with, and I was like, chucking away clothes to get stuff in my suitcase and making sure I stayed under it. I'm talking, of course, of Trickerion, Masters of Illusion. Look, again, it's a game I've not played with other people. I'd love to play a game of Trickerion with other people, but I've not played it with other people. And I do throw Dalgard's Academy into the game when I'm playing it solo. They've just had the Kickstarter for the expansion as well. But yeah, I do throw Dalgard's Academy. Trickerion is a game you are a magician battling against other magicians to try and put on the best show, fill the most seats, get the best tricks, learn the best tricks, build tricks in your workshop. There are so many mechanisms in this game. And as a solo gamer, if you want the full experience, you want to throw absolutely everything in there, you're probably going to have to read about 3 or 4 rule books. And that is going to be a huge barrier to entry for some people. Now, when I played the game, and when I first got the game, I dove straight into the solo with Dalgard's Academy thrown in there, and you got is it the Nightmare Alley or whatever it's called, the Black Market, or I can't remember the name of it, and I threw everything in. It took me forever to learn, and I enjoyed every bloody minute of it. And it is a game that is big, and it has loads of strategies and loads of mechanisms, and it also is a game that will switch the winning positions at various points, and you may think you're winning, but the AI is going to come up and potentially overtake you, so you've got to do those mitigation strategies. It's a game that requires you to think on multiple levels. It feels insanely complex when you first start reading through all of those rule books, and that, unlike Cerebria, I don't find the rule books overcomplicated or overflowering things. It's just the fact that you have to understand, get a true feeling on how all these mechanisms mesh together to really get the most out of the game. But once you do, once you take that time to learn Trickerion, to set it up on your table, to give yourself a good few hours to play a game, and then you're going to want to play it again, because you always know on a solo game, when you first get a game, first game is all about pulling levers and understanding what mechanisms work. You're not going to play optimally. By the second game, you'll start to develop your strategies in there. The more you play it, the more you get out of this game. It's a game that demands that you play more, but it comes at such a cost, and that cost is to play it solo with everything that you need to get, that you want to throw in there, which is not necessarily the recommended way to learn it. It's my way. I learned it, but it's not necessarily the recommended way to learn it. But if you do, you're going to have this utterly wonderful, wonderful time. For a 10-year-old game, it would stand up absolutely today as a new release. It would be crowned and it would be lauded as this wonderful game of strategic mixes and elements, etc., if it was released today. And that's the beauty about this game, is what they've got is an evergreen title, obviously in Trickerion. From a multiplayer perspective, from a solo perspective, everything about it works if you're the type of gamer that enjoys these thick, crunchy games that require you to operate on multiple levels. And also, you must enjoy losing as well, because you're going to want to lose, because you probably will lose in your early games of Trickerion. I play it now and I can still lose now, but there are difficulty modifiers, of course, so I can definitely still lose. And sometimes I can know I'm losing fairly early on, and I think that's one of the things. If I've not played a strategy right, it can be a little bit difficult to catch up. It's not impossible. There are things that can be done to counteract and try and catch up, but it can have an effect on your overall game. However, as I say, for a game that's 10 years old, for a game that's as big and crunchy and weighty as it is, for a game that has a high level of complexity, for a game that is a solo perspective, you're going to have to read through multiple rule books, and you're going to have some reference books, little booklets next to you telling you about the various tricks and gizmos, etc. You're going to have to be prepared for all that, but once you crack that code, it's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful game. And of course it gets overtaken by the cult of the new, so we don't see many people talking about it these days, but for me it is an evergreen title. Most Mindclash games always stay in my collection with the exception of Septima. And this is obviously never ever leaving my my collection. I think it's an absolutely stunning game for the right people, and from a solo player, if you're willing to put the time in for it and you want to learn those rules, then you know you're going to have an absolutely amazing game. So now we come down to my number one game. Oh my god, well, it shouldn't surprise you now. So if you're aware of Mindclash Games, then you probably know every release that they've done, and you'll know there's been one glaring omission from that so far. I've mentioned a couple of adjunct games about it so far, one expansion and one called The Revenant, and of course I'm talking about Voidfall. Voidfall, I think, is it 2023? Yeah, it was my game of the year in 2023. It's a game that I played again a few times throughout its development, with David directly, and then sometimes on TTS. And when I got the final full kind of galactic box, whatever it's called, version, and I spent the hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it was, punching it out and sorting it all out. There's a lot to sort out. And then I spent a night or so going through the rulebook in serious depth. And I think I played the intro game as well, which is a two-player game. So I played it two-handed to understand exactly what I could do. So once I'd done that, and then you get to the solo game, it's going to demand some time for you from a solo perspective. Your initial setup on this is probably going to run 45 minutes the very first time you play, because you don't know what's what. You don't know what goes where. You've got these game trays, which, they're not the best in the world, okay, but they function, they work, but there are some inconsistencies in the game tray stuff. But your first time you set it up, it's probably going to take you around about 45 minutes. Now me, I played it so many times now solo, I could probably set it up in around about 20-25 minutes now. It's still a lot of time, because you got your 20-25 minutes set up at the front end. You're also going to need that at the back end as well, so that's almost an hour, and then you're going to have to allow yourself maybe 3 hours to play through the game, maybe longer than that, depending on how you think and as a solo game or what you do. But wow, what a game. It is it's not quite a 4X game, but it's a 4X-ish game, if you like. Where you're expanding out into space, and from a solo gamer's perspective, you're going to play against the Voidborn. So these are these aliens that are going to keep coming in and trying to take over sectors, and they're going to fight you. So there's combat involved, but it's a proper strategy game. So the combat is purely deterministic. You will know before instigating combat whether you are going to win or not, and that is that will really speak to some people. There are dice in the game, but you don't roll the dice. Those dice are counters on various sectors, etc. You do not roll the game. You will have all the information at hand to say before you make a move, to say, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to push into that sector. I'm going to destroy the void pawn. I know how many losses I'm going to take, but I'm going to kill them, and I'll be able to expand into that sector. But getting to that point, that is the beauty, because it's not just about combat. It's about building your facilities out there, be they commerce facilities or science facilities, etc. It's about gaining resources. You can optimize those resources and use some of the cards that you've got. You're going to have, I think it's 9 cards in any one round, and you're going to have to choose which cards and which actions on those cards that you can do, because you're going to have to pay resources generally and do something on the back end of it to try and do that. All the while in the solo, you've got the Voidborn kind of progressively coming in and starting to invade sectors and looking to come in, and you've got threats that are coming out which make it really, really kind of, some of these threats may be instant, some may be persistent. You've got to find a way to get rid of that threat, because otherwise you're going to get corruption. It's a huge table hog from a solo perspective, but by God, does it look fantastic on there. But looks aren't everything, obviously. We also have the setup time, we have the teardown time, we have the not 100% perfect storage solution in the form of the game trays. We have the big, thick, heavy rule book, and again, once you get into it and you understand the iconography, and tools, wonderful iconography, of course. Once you understand that, you will start to play very quickly. But you can also have those turns where you are just kind of, if you played Mage Knight, right? Mage Knight, it's not Mage Knight in terms of working your turns out, because Mage Knight, I can spend 15 minutes working a turn out, start playing it, and then think, that's not working, and take it back. It's not that, but you're going to want to forward strategize into the medium and long term in Voidfall, but also be ready to adapt to whatever may come in. So you're kind of attacking it on 3 fronts, and it's good to kind of take that time, look at the cards that you've got to play, and think, right, is this the best card? What is the order I want to play? Not just my next card, but my next 2 cards in maybe as well. And can I work that into my strategy to do it? I have played it with other people, and I'm going to be honest with you, I really enjoy it with other people. Again, it's a game. If somebody said to me, "Come play Voidfall," I'd be like, perfect, let's lose hours in playing Voidfall. What a wonderful way to spend an afternoon. But I prefer the solo. I really enjoy what happens with the solo. Now, David Turksey and Nigel Buckle, I think it was based on one of Nigel's earlier games as well. They worked so hard on creating a really rounded experience. And I know there's an expansion coming out, but I can't even talk about kind of how that works. But what David and Nigel have done is create this wonderful experience that feels, my actions seem to make thematic sense to what I'm doing, and what it does is it appreciates the vastness of space. Although you've got your spaceship miniatures or tokens, if you haven't got the miniatures, etc., on the board, you've got to remember that space is big, and these battles, they're not like over in an hour. These battles may take place over millennia as well. So there's lots of things that you kind of getting your concept around, not only just space but time itself, in how thematic it is. Once you grasp that concept, you understand thematically how everything works. And yeah, it's just an utterly fantastic game with loads and loads of asymmetrical factions to play from. It is currently my #1 Mindclash game, and yes, I know, the next time I get Nacrin out or Trikiran out, I might go, well, you know what, I kind of prefer them to that. But as soon as I would get Voidfall to the table, I think Voidfall would usurp the others straight away. So yeah, it's without a shadow of a doubt, it's a stone cold classic in my books, is Voidfall. I think it's an utterly wonderful game. And from a solo player's perspective, again, if you like big meaty games, or you're going to have to learn rule books, and if you don't play it for a few months, you're going to have to relearn the rules again. And you're going to have to operate on multiple strategies, and you'll feel so clever when things get pulled off. I'm not the best game player in the world. I lose far more than I win on board games. But when I pull a move off, and when I pull a strategy off, and it actually works for me, it might not win me the game, but boy, I look back and I think, God, yeah, I did bloody well there. I am some form of genius. I'm not, because the very next turn I may get my ass kicked a little bit. It doesn't matter. I have those moments, those innate moments of just wonderful glory from Voidfall. That's the reason that it is my #1 Mindclash game. There we go. That is everything Mindclash that has been released so far, and some stuff that hasn't been released so far. I think they have a 2-player game coming up soon as well, from when I spoke to Dorka at UK Games Expo. But I really don't know much about that at this stage. I am always eager to try out the next Mindclash game. I think they serve a particular a particular section of board gamers exceptionally well. And these are board gamers who aren't necessarily invested in theme as being a primary motivating factor, but they're invested in the mechanisms, the strategies, the long-term strategies. They're invested in something where people can carefully plan out their moves, 2, 3, 4 moves in advance, and then try and capitalize on that whilst managing, kind of what your other players are doing there. I think, with the team that you have in-house of the designers there, and with David Turksey, doing the solo modes, and Mindclash Games are almost perfectly suited to David as well in terms of how the solo modes he creates. I'm always a Mindclash fan. There is always going to be an element of publisher bias there, because I'm always eager for a Mindclash game. However, there's some games that just don't work for me, i.e. Septima. Not for me at all. And Astra, I have no interest in playing that from a solo perspective as well, with a fan-made solo. That's all right. That's a game for me and my wife to play over an hour, Dark Knight or in the motorhome, etc. Absolutely fine with that. But by and large, for that right kind of gamer, if if you're willing to invest the time and you're willing to invest the effort in learning the Mindclash games, if you're of that mindset, you're going to have a fantastic time. There we go. That's my ranking of games from Mindclash from a solo perspective. You have to forgive me, I've been quite ill recently, so my voice is only just starting to come back. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video. My name's Mark. This is Not Board Gaming. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Excuse me, check out my other videos as well. By all means, check out Mindclash's page. Just one final thought. If you can't find anyone else to play with, then there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Until next time, bye-bye.